businesses, when you ask people how things are, I'm busy, and I'm much rather well, busy, but are you productive? You know, so as long as you are moving forward, that's all right, and you're enjoying it, of course, which you clearly are because you're smiling a lot, and yeah.
Yeah. I do smile through the pain. I'm just telling you that.
Smile through the pain. I know. And then suddenly, when the fax machine was, do remember it kind of buzzing and something was coming through. And you're like, what's it going to be? And it was an advert or something completely forgettable.
So tell me, like, you've worked with really big names, NatWest, and a lot of big names, though. And you've been in the industry for a really long time. So let's go back to when you started. How did you start? How did you get into marketing?
How did I get into marketing? Well, I was lucky enough to get onto a graduate scheme post university. Like a lot of people, I had no idea, literally no idea what I wanted to do. But I thought if I work for a big company, they are going to expose me to every possible function, every possible job, every possible thing that I could do. Um, so that's what I did. I got into a graduate scheme, and through that, I figured out that actually maybe marketing's where I want to be.
Yeah, that's lovely. Which company did you get in through with the
I
graduate
started
scheme?
with a company called Nationwide,
Okay.
building society. Yeah, many moons ago.
Yeah. So you were there for like the whole year?
So the graduate scheme was for 2 years. I
Okay.
exited after 18 months. It was very much designed to give you an insight into the business, but also a pathway into the business into a permanent role. You're not guaranteed with many graduate schemes that you will land a role in the company. So it put the onus on the individual to figure that out. So hence why it was 2 years, but I managed to kind of exit
Yeah.
just before it finished.
Yeah. So when you got into that,
Yeah.
right? Was it like hands on, all hands on the deck, doing everything all at once, or you were like focused onto one niche that you want to do and then you want to grow into that?
So I would define the marketing department as at the time as more of a product marketing department, um, and my role in that was quite junior. And at the time, it was a very hierarchical establishment. So it's very much expected that you did your time, at the in the foundation.
Yeah.
You really understood the business, the kind of the rules of the game. You got that classical marketing training in order to kind of work your way up.
Yeah.
And they did like you to, I think, at that stage, determine what sort of marketer you were. You were a brand marketer, were you a product marketer, were you a direct marketer? I mean, things have changed quite a lot now because I think there's you hear a lot about people calling themselves T-shaped marketers. So
Yeah.
they've got this broad kind of umbrella of skills and attributes, but this kind of spine of kind of strategic thinking. And I think in big companies you often got more expectation to specialize
Yeah.
because they've got bigger teams, whereas in smaller, leaner companies, often you do have roles that cover so many bases.
So do you think that one role can cover a lot of bases?
Well, it has to in small companies. So I do now work with a lot of startup companies, scale up companies, and often they might have teams of one or two people, and those one or two people are responsible for the whole marketing engine. All the P's, every channel, everything. So those roles tend to be a really great way to accelerate your learning when it comes to marketing because there's no escape. There is no corner to hide in. You need to focus on where the opportunities are.
Yeah. So after Nationwide, for 2 years you were there.
I was there for 5 years in
Oh,
total.
okay.
Yeah.
Then, so you moved on to being a permanent employee there then.
Yeah, I got that job in marketing. It was a junior level role. Then I had a couple of other roles across the department. Gave me an opportunity to, I suppose, really understand the fundamentals of the business. I loved it. It was a great company to work for. I got married, and we wanted to move to London, and Nationwide weren't based in London, so I had to leave, unfortunately, and find a different role.
Perfect. And then, so London. I'm just gonna move on to
London.
London. So, do you think there are more opportunities in London than the whole of the UK?
Well, I mean, there are purely because of the scale of the city. A lot of companies have head offices there.
Yeah.
I do think it's a difficult question to answer in light of remote working. But in terms of scale, in terms of the size and magnitude of the London economy and the southeast in general, it's the powerhouse of the UK. So a lot of roads do lead to London,
Yeah.
but I suppose the remote working opportunity means that you don't necessarily have to live there in order to unlock those.
Yeah. So when you moved to London, what did marketing mean at that time here?
Well, what it meant for me was an opportunity to work on a big brand
Yeah.
and to again in London with I work for NatWest Group, is to just further refine my craft, if you like, and marketing absolutely is a repeatable skill process. I do believe that if you can do it in one market, one category, one industry, you can do it in another. It's typically the company culture, the product, the proposition, everything else that you need to kind of get your head around.
Yeah.
And moving from one finance company to another, it might have been easy to assume that things would be the same, but it absolutely wasn't. There are different systems, different people, different approval processes. Everything was very challenging. But marketing ultimately was about trying to acquire, trying to retain, and trying to, I suppose, help the company grow a bit more than it did last year.
Yeah. So at that, there were no socials at that time, or was there Facebook? Okay, just clarifying it.
Okay, so you can figure out how old I am. So actually, so when I joined marketing, internet was a thing.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, you say that, but it hasn't been around forever.
Yeah.
Smartphones were not a thing, and actually, it was probably the time when people were starting to access the internet on their phones, on their mobile device. So, of course, social media was absolutely not part of the game, and I think it's much more complicated and much more 24/7 today than it ever was, because you didn't have those channels where you had such immediacy.
Yeah.
You were focusing on other things. Direct mail was a big thing, and direct mail, those campaigns would take a long time to plan, to execute, to kind of refine the data, and then to obviously measure the impact. And the campaign cycle was a lot longer. It might have been a little bit more in depth because there are lots of different components, and it had to be, but it was a lot longer. Whereas now it's so rapid.
Yeah. Magazines were a big thing.
Well, again, it kind of depends on the proposition, right? So certainly the ones that I was working on at the time, a lot of specialist press titles were really important in finance, but also ads in national and regional newspapers. Absolutely, very expensive at the time. But there was always a lot of pride of seeing your ad in a public publication, or even better, your parents seeing it, or at least telling them that was something that you'd worked on. Less so these days, because there's so many other channels that people are focusing on.
Yeah, but I think it's still a proud moment if you're getting posted on a magazine. I still like the whole magazine feel of things, and I absolutely love, like, if one of the clients I'm working with and their brand is being featured on the magazine on the editorial basis. Love that proud moment at all.
It is a proud moment, and it's funny because a lot of the agencies that I've worked with, the campaigns for them, they typically will frame the creative. They'll put it on the wall. And in many companies, they don't do that. They very much kind of move on to the next campaign. And I think it's very easy to feel that marketing is very ephemeral. It's kind of very short-lived. Whereas actually, what you want to be thinking is that you're building something for the future. And I think any campaign takes a major amount of work and effort, so you should be celebrated.
Yeah, 100%.
Should be celebrated.
100%. So, what do you? So it's okay. I'm gonna ask this, but just asking it and putting it out there.
Okay.
So, fax machines. You've used them.
I have, yes.
So from fax machines to TikTok,
Yeah.
you've seen some like really rapid growth in technology. Do you think
Mhm.
that's affected the whole marketing spectrum?
Well, of course it has, in pretty profound ways. I never marketed on a fax machine,
I
by
know,
the
I
way,
get that.
but they were used, and many companies were. That was the way, because again, email wasn't as embedded as it is today. I mean, that was
Yeah,
the way to communicate facts and factual information. Um, Look, marketing is a very complicated technical endeavor these days, and the modern marketer has to wear many hats, more hats than I ever used to. um, but at the same time, it's got more opportunity to measure impact,
yeah,
to deliver at speed,
yeah,
and also to really kind of tune in to the personalization required to kind of to meet the customer's needs.
yeah.
So there's many more opportunities to do better and more creative stuff, which I think is really exciting.
100%. But so do you think marketing has gotten a little bit more complicated now with like the whole online space being so cluttered with a lot of content? And do you think it's gotten a little bit more complicated to reach the right audience? And how was it when you started working in the industry?
So look, it's definitely more complicated,
Mm.
um, purely because of all the different things that you need to consider. I would argue the process is still the same,
Yeah.
but probably it's quite interesting that when I work with businesses talking about social media, that often they want to be on every channel straight away or every platform straight away. Whereas in reality, again, a key marketing principle sounds simple, but prioritize and be really good on one channel or one platform first, and then go to the second, and then to the third, and then to the fourth. Those principles haven't really changed, but clearly the channels that we had to play with in the past was just there were fewer of them.
Yeah.
um, but probably the greatest challenge is just the level of competition in the marketplace.
Yeah.
I think it's really crowded. It's a lot. The barriers to entry for new businesses are a lot lower. You've got many more entities that you're competing with, not just big brands, small brands, international brands,
Yeah.
digital only brands.
Yeah.
So I think the worst place to be from a marketing perspective is the wallpaper space, where you just blend into the background and you're mediocre. You have to stand out for the right reason at the right time for your customer. And again, that principle hasn't really changed, but it's definitely harder to achieve that these days for sure.
100% think so. So from being like a corporate employee
Yeah.
to now doing your own thing,
Mhm.
what motivated you to do that, to go for that shift or that transformation, if I may?
Look, there are a couple of things. I
Okay.
mean, I do think the market is changing. And again, when I started, I would say the majority of people were working in permanent roles that had a lot of potential longevity.
Yeah.
These days, there's a whole world of fractional marketing that's basically appeared,
Yeah.
and I think a lot of that's to do with there's such a great startup culture in the UK. Um, I think last year there was more than 900,000 new businesses started in the UK.
Yeah.
So that's a huge amount, and that's been growing recently. Those businesses tend, in the early days, to struggle to justify paying for a full-time kind of
Marketing.
CMO
Yeah.
or headcount or resource. And so the fractional way of working gives them an opportunity to access top tier talent at a fraction of the price. So I've definitely pivoted to try and respond to that need,
Yeah.
but also at the same time, I think the sorts of things that get me out of bed in the morning, which are really feeling like I'm making an impact, working with great people, great teams, tend to also have kind of driven me in that direction where I've got little bit more control over who I work with.
Okay. So for like people looking at this, explain like fractional marketing to us. Like, how do you become that? What's the process of it?
So I mean, there's a couple of things there. So, what is it, first of all? So, think of your time and your energy as a lemon.
Okay. Okay.
And when you work permanently, you give that lemon to one company, yeah? And so you spend all of your time there at that company. When you're working fractionally, you slice that lemon up into segments, and you might give a couple of those segments to like a startup company. You might give one to, say, charity, that you want to do some pro bono work for. You might give a third to, I don't know, a bigger corporation that needs some freelance. You might keep a segment for yourself if you've got a hobby or you just want to spend time with your family.
Yeah.
So, as the name suggests, you are just splitting your time across a number of different attributes, putting yourself in control as to where you spend that time. In terms of becoming a fractional, I mean, in many ways, it can be as easy as, well, today I'm going to become a fractional.
Yeah.
In essence, the permanent market tends to work through job boards and opportunities being advertised.
Yeah.
Whereas the fractional market, there is still that route. Sometimes companies tend not to be advertising these opportunities. So I think there's a greater impact on two things. Number one is your personal brand. You need to be visible, you need to be findable. LinkedIn is going to be a big part of that. And secondly, you've got to network. And you've got to network not for today, but for tomorrow. So you've got to get out there. You've got to meet people. You've got to connect with people. And invariably, show them who you are, and almost sow the seeds, sow the acorns,
Yeah.
so that they can be harvested in the future, if you like. So there's a lot more onus on the individual, almost operating like a business, like an entrepreneur, because your destiny is in your hands completely. The opportunities that you create will come from your own work. Does that make sense?
It does
Yeah?
perfectly.
You like the lemon analogy?
I loved it. So, and I forgot my question, so I'm just gonna. So, okay. So, with the fractional side of things,
Yeah.
and the corporate side of things, and combining them,
Yeah.
what is one thing that you did, or a quality that you have, you think, that really kept you in the game for the longer run?
Well, I mean, I think when I first started out at Nationwide many years ago, a career tended to be quite sequential and linear. You were expected to kind of do your time in a junior role, and then hopefully you might get promoted into a more senior role, and so on and so forth, with the North Star being that maybe marketing director role.
Yeah.
So that was typically the way it was. But I think careers now can pivot, they can go in multiple different directions, and you can even go backwards, right? So I think for me, I've probably accepted that I need to be able to pivot,
Yeah.
and I need to be able to respond to what the market needs, but also what I need to help me feel fulfilled, but also to help me feel like I'm doing great work. So I think through that period of time, some might say I've been a little bit opportunistic. So I've grabbed things that have maybe appeared that I wasn't expecting, but equally at the same time, I've tried to create opportunities that help me continue to move in a direction that fits with the goal I have in mind at that time.
I love that. I love that. And I think everybody should be an opportunist. Create opportunities and grab them.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I quite often talk about the horizon of measurement.
Okay.
Which is, I think it's really important to any decision that you make is to ensure that you give it time to consider whether that was the right thing, or whether that, or essentially what the impact was, because things do take time. So it's very easy after a week to say that was a bad decision. Why did I do this?
Yeah.
A couple of weeks later, you might feel completely different, and even after 6 months, you might say that's the best decision I ever made. So you've got to give these things time. So don't be too quick to judge.
Yeah.
Because careers are, they're long things. And don't measure them in weeks or months. You may measure them in years, but also measure them in feelings, emotions. Like, am I feeling great about what I'm doing? Am I really delivering something? And if you're not, then those are the sorts of responses that you should start asking questions about, well, maybe I need to redirect.
Yeah.
You know, there's nothing worse than feeling many years into the future that you've maybe sat in a role too long.
Okay, so if we time traveled, what would shock your 2000 self most about today's marketing?
2000 self. So
Yeah.
yeah, we're going back 25 years. Okay. Well, we've talked about social media already. Didn't exist.
Yeah.
Dominates our lives in many ways. But I think this point about marketing today is a 24/7 pursuit. And it was back in the day. It was a very proactive endeavor. We were putting stuff out there.
Yeah.
And unless people complained, and by the way, I did used to have to write complaint letters. That was a marketing job. You never really heard from customers unless they were calling the sales team. Whereas today, you can see the engagement. I mean, and social media, after all, clues in the name, it's a social platform. You're trying to get engagement, and that's fantastic. But again, that just to a person sitting in the 2000s, that would be completely mind-blowing.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Do you think there was not a lot of negativity back then that it is now, because it's really on your face now? Everybody just go onto the comments and and just.
So I guess two things is there probably was a lot of negativity, but there was no way of you ever
Saying
that.
Yeah.
I mean, I did work, during the global financial crisis,
Yeah.
and that was a tough time working in finance. And there was one moment where it was winter, it'd been snowing, and members of the public were throwing snowballs at employees as they left the building. So that was very visible demonstration of people not being happy.
Yeah.
But I think the second thing is, I've talked about the wallpaper effect. To stand out, to get noticed, typically the best way is to be contrarian, is to be provocative.
Yeah.
And I had a a mentor who used to say, don't forget that people will watch kind of fails online. They'll watch things go wrong, probably more than they'll watch things go right. So I think people on social media, it's a way of getting visibility, probably faster and quicker. Is there more? I mean, probably, because it's been fueled, but it's not like it's wasn't always there. But then, at the same time, you see a lot of brand fandom and love out there as well, which again, you could argue, well, you never really kind of saw that back in the day. So there are kind of both sides, as there are to everything, I think.
Yeah. So what is that one thing that you've been carrying since like the start of your career to now, and it's not negotiable? Like you're not gonna, even for money, you're not gonna do that. You're gonna stay away from that thing or whatever that is. Could be a politics or anything, honestly.
I'm definitely a big believer in non-negotiables, because one of the companies I work for talked a lot about performance energy, which is this principle that in order to be at your best, you need to optimize your performance energy, and your performance energy is something that is very individual.
Yeah.
So I mean, my daughter's a lot older now, but taking her to school in the morning was something I really loved to do, and that would really kind of start my day off well. So for an employer to tell me I couldn't do that, that would be a massive dent. I also developed a running habit over a few years, and again, I found that being able to do that gave me more performance energy when I got back to the office. And part of that kind of thinking, kind of tend to look at the day in terms of zones of flexibility for doing those non-negotiables. There's the start of the day, there's the middle of the day, and there's the end of the day. And again, everyone's slightly different. So I tend to be more of a morning person. So I kind of do my best work in the morning, and I maybe flag a little bit in the afternoon. So again, I should be adjusting my day. So I think when it comes to non-negotiables, there's a lot of family related stuff. There's health and well-being stuff. And I've got a new dog called Hero that needs a lot of attention and walking, and he's a priority as well.
Yeah.
But for everyone's slightly different. So certainly when I've worked with people, when I've managed people, I'm trying to understand what is your non-negotiable. What is it that's going to help you be at your best and deliver the best work of your life? Because ultimately, in any role you're doing, that should be your goal. How do I deliver the best work of my life and really, really enjoy it at the same time?
Can you deliver the best work of your life sitting on the desk 9 to 5?
Of course you can.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course you can. I mean, it's a bit of a Japanese philosophy, I think, which is whatever you do, try and do it to the best of your ability. You know, if it's sweeping the streets, if it's growing strawberries, if it's sitting at your desk writing a social media post,
Yeah.
you know, put your heart and soul into it, you know, because you're going to feel so much richer from that. But there's nothing worse than feeling like I maybe didn't give that my full attention, because sometimes those things can come back to bite you, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So some tactics. We're going to the facts again.
We're getting to the facts again. Okay.
So what are the tactics that aged poorly?
Yeah, well, the facts one definitely,
See?
but I mean, direct marketing used to predominantly be a postal based channel, and there was a lot of guilt from me working with direct marketing, because you knew that you were creating a lot of paper.
Yeah.
You know, that a lot of it was going to go in the bin.
Yeah.
But you had this scale advantage on your side, and you knew that if you sent out enough, that there would be a small percentage that would justify the whole campaign. I think that thinking's really kind of changed a lot now. That's kind of scale thinking, but also, you know, we've got to market in a sustainable way.
Yeah.
And often, actually, postal DM can still really cut through because no one's doing it. But it's expensive and there's a high throwaway risk. So I think the more personal you can be, the more personalization you can inject into your marketing, the better it will be, but also the less wastage as well.
Okay. So coming to the modern side of things now, this 2025, right?
Yeah.
Some things that we see online or we see in marketing, what do you think marketing habits that actually confuse and frustrate you?
Marketing habits.
Yeah, or something in marketing that frustrates you, that just frustrates you.
Well, I think marketing is sometimes a bit like going to the gym.
Yeah.
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 So, yeah, if I wanted to get fit, someone would probably say, look, start training, go to the gym. And probably after the first day, I'll feel really tired and exhausted, but will see no impact whatsoever.
Yeah.
What makes me go back to the gym? Because I kind of know that actually, if I do that over a period of time, I'm going to get fitter, I'm going to get stronger, and get better. And yeah, marketing does sometimes need time to work its magic, if you like. So I do get tired of people thinking we need an instantaneous result. And of course, if you spend a load of money on Google Ads, you are going to get some clicks.
Yeah.
You're going to see some result. But you've got to imagine that at any moment in time, only probably 5% of your target audience are in the market. Yeah. And so the other 95%, that's 95%. That's, you know, a much bigger part of the market. They're not going to buy today, but they might buy tomorrow.
Yeah.
And they're only going to buy tomorrow if you're on the shopping list, if you're in their kind of consciousness, so that when the opportunity arises, they immediately kind of recall your brand.
Yeah.
And a good way to think of this is going to the hairdressers, right? Because people don't need their hair cut every day, do they?
Yeah, no. Yeah.
But maybe every 6 weeks. So again, it's a really good example of not everyone needs a haircut.
Yeah.
Total size of the market, but there's only a small proportion of people looking for a haircut on any given day.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, that does. Yeah, that does.
Yeah.
So do you think that campaigns that we do now, because well, of course they're mostly social and digital now, are different from the campaigns that you used to do before?
I mean, they look different, they feel different, they've got different response mechanisms, but the principles and the planning are still the same. And I think the methodology behind marketing is, you know, it's here forever, if you like.
Yeah.
But how that gets executed, how that gets measured, of course it's going to change, and the execution, the creative part of it's going to change, the language is going to change, but it's a principle based endeavor, I think. So that's why it's really important to learn the process, the method, to get the training, because you can apply that. And I think, again, people need to be aware that probably the worst thing you can do in marketing is copy the outcome. You know, oh my God, you know, and you see this on LinkedIn a lot. I did this and I got these results, and it's like, well, I'm going to do that. But really, what you need to do is follow the process that they followed, or the methodology that got them to that outcome, because every business is slightly different. And so every target customer is slightly different. So your outcome is going to look different. It will need to look different for it to be effective. So, you know, there aren't really any shortcuts from that perspective. So, you know, and Mark Ritson talks about the Holy Trinity.
Yeah.
So segmentation, targeting, positioning, kind of get those things really clear. Really understand your ICP, who your target customer is.
Yeah.
You know, diagnose the market, and then figure out your strategy, and then get on with the tactics. And you know, investing in that foundation will always set you up for a better outcome.
Yeah. Yeah, I think marketing benefits you in the longer run, especially if you're doing organic marketing. With paid, you do get like results.
Yeah, they go hand in hand, because, as I say, there are people in the market today. There are, of course, there are.
Yeah. Do you believe in organic or paid marketing?
Well, you've got to have both.
Yeah.
You've got to have both for that for that very point. But of course, how you do both is very different. So you know, you've got to ensure that. I mean, I always believe in breadth, depth, and impact. So breadth, lots of, as many relevant channels as possible. Depth is you really want to ensure that you are tailoring for those channels. You know, again, a simple example is what you put on LinkedIn, you're not going to put on TikTok. You need to kind of work in the way that the channel works. And then with impact, you've got to have a really strong call to action and a measurement framework, so that you can report back and measure you know, progress on how things are moving forward. And I know brand can be hard to measure, but there will be some leading indicators that you can use. And why is this all important? Because another thing I really believe in is that marketing has got to market marketing.
Yeah.
You know, we've got to tell people internally what we're up to.
Yeah.
We've got to tell people what we're testing, even if it means that things don't work, because we want to show that we're on it. And there's nothing worse than the marketing team sitting in the corner doing their own thing. They need to be standing shoulder to shoulder with the organization, telling people what they're up to, and taking people with them.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so a lot of myths you've busted here. Like, a lot of myths are busted. That's good. What do you think about AI?
AI?
Yeah.
Oh, it's pretty incredible stuff, right?
Yeah.
It's, I mean, again, it's pretty mind blowing what can now be done on AI.
Oh, yeah.
And what can be done now versus only a very short period of time ago. The way I see it is, it's a tool, you know, and it's like any tool. It all comes down to the mastery of the tool as to how effective it's going to be. But it's changing rapidly, and I just encourage everybody. So Gary Vaynerchuk says people should be spending an hour a day on AI, getting their head around it, because it's not gonna go away.
Yeah.
It's in everybody's interest, every marketer's interest, to understand how to unlock the greatest opportunity for AI. At the moment, it feels like it's a bit of an effectiveness play.
Yeah.
I can do things a bit faster, but really, it's where can that really unlock value, you know, and revenue for the organization. So it's hard to underestimate the paradigm shift we're going to see in marketing, and that we're already seeing from AI kind of entering the workplace.
Yeah, I think things are going to look really different till 2026, like really different. The other day, I was so the in-house marketing that I do. Somebody called in there to ask for a query, and they were like, "Yeah, we were going to help you with that, whatever." And they're like, "Where did you find us?" Because I asked that question so that I could record things. So they're like, "Oh, we asked ChatGPT that could you recommend this, and your name came up." So a lot of things are going to shift, because I find myself asking ChatGPT that what's the best, where can I get this, let's say this type of denim, or where can I get that? So it's going to integrate. It's
Yeah,
basically,
I mean, I saw a great post the other day talking about how already people are starting to kind of almost look back through, with a wry smile at Google. Like, you ask it a question
yeah,
and the response is just a long list of stuff that you need to figure out. So of course, contextual search is providing answers, and they're good answers
yeah,
to those sorts of questions. I was in India recently,
yeah.
and I would probably say 80% of my itinerary was shaped by
ChatGPT.
ChatGPT. So you can imagine if you can then convert that into business, hotel booking, etc., etc. There's a great business model there. So I think those sorts of opportunities are going to come. So I know a lot of people are worried about impact on work, on roles. You would hope that just as many opportunities are unlocked as they are displaced.
Yeah.
I mean, these sorts of things have happened before. So
Okay.
if we go back even further to like the Industrial Revolution, a lot of people were working in factories. Those factories became mechanized. So those jobs were no longer required. But I think marketing are in a brilliant position to lead and to ensure that, I think what people call the AI sandwich is I suppose being eaten in the best possible way. So AI sandwich being start with human input, human strategy, human thinking, AI in the middle, and then human kind of validating the output. And I guess it's the filling of that sandwich, how juicy it is, how tasty it is, as to how beneficial that process will be to the organization.
I think it could be of great help. AI, honestly, I think it would. A lot of things are going to change till 2026. We're already looking at a lot of big changes, like AI agents and all of them. And you'd always need a human to put in the human essence into things.
Yeah, I mean, contextual search requires more content. So actually, there's opportunities in that space. So I think you have to see it as something that's going to help the modern marketer do a better job for the business.
Yeah, I don't know if they do it now, like with ChatGPT or Gemini or different agents. Do they do like paid marketing there? I don't know.
Not at the moment.
I think that's going to be a thing.
It will definitely be a thing.
Yeah.
It will definitely be a thing. It's not. It's always, with any change. There's at some point how you monetize it, and especially how you market it, it's always going to come.
Yeah. Yahoo versus Google. Yahoo versus Google.
Right.
So Yahoo had his own era, like its own era, right?
Right.
And Google is everywhere now.
Yeah.
Do you think that Google was better, or do you think that Google positioned itself as better, or Yahoo did not grow with the market? This is a very random question. It just popped into my head.
Yeah, I haven't studied it to any degree, but I think, I think Google they were great at marketing their company, and Yahoo made some different bets, I think. And I suppose what's unusual is just the Google domination, because again, back in the day, there were so many search engines that on paper looked really, really good. There was one called Ask Jeeves. Have you ever heard of Ask Jeeves? Which is basically, the search engine was a bit like a butler called Jeeves, and you'd ask the butler a question.
Oh, that's lovely.
But they've all fallen by the wayside. I think maybe Google's better marketing, better monetization, but better algorithm that gave better search results, because ultimately that was really what people wanted. And very quickly it entered the vernacular. So, people use the brand name. I'm going to Google it. No one says Yahoo it.
Yeah.
It definitely got to a point, which is kind of interesting again from a marketing perspective, because most markets you would expect there to be a number of competitors dominant, but in online search, Google have just had such a monopoly for so long.
A pretty long time now. All right. So the plot twist moments now.
Okay.
A failure or a turning point could be any that shifted your whole perspective about where you're going, what you're doing in the career journey, or even the personal life, whichever you feel more comfortable with.
Okay. Yeah, I think at the beginning I always wanted to work in financial services. Always wanted to work for a bank. Say the bank I was working at, suffered very heavily during the global financial crisis, and you know, it no longer was a place I wanted to be. So I went to work for Bupa, which is a healthcare company, very purpose orientated. I felt like I was doing some good, helping people focus on their health, and their purpose statement at the time was to help people live longer, happier, healthier lives. So to feel like I'm contributing to that, made me feel great. But not to say that banks aren't great, because from all of that came the concept of helpful banking, and there's nothing more important than people understanding how to get the most out of their money, etc., etc. But I think at the time, I probably started off thinking I'm going to be in financial services forever.
Yeah.
And I didn't. I went to healthcare, and then I felt like actually what's super invigorating for a marketer is to go from one industry, one sector to another, or even one scale of company. So I've worked in massive international conglomerates. I've also worked in small 50-person teams, and both have their pros and both have their cons, but both make you a better marketer. So I'm definitely a champion for people kind of broadening their experience, and don't get boxed, or worse still, don't let people box you. Don't let people define who you are. You need to drive that yourself.
So in the whole career journey, what was the most difficult season with marketing?
Difficult season?
Yes. Season.
I of course, was managing quite a large team during COVID.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And COVID came out of nowhere, and it had a whole language associated with it, like furlough, that no one's ever mentioned since. But there was some really difficult decisions, and the company I was working for at the time, I can remember I was really excited because we'd done a big piece of work about purpose discovery for the business, that I think was going to really kind of change the game for the company. And we had a really important board meeting, and the meeting started, and I could just tell that the CEO was distracted, and after about half an hour I said, look, to be honest, this is not the priority right now. And at the time I kind of left what did he mean? And of course COVID was just coming out. That was a Hong Kong based business. That was where the constraints hit first. And so it then rippled across the world, and I had an international team, and I could kind of see it kind of coming to London. So of course that came out of nowhere, and immediately within that meeting you realize that there were more important things to consider. It did really potentially would have a catastrophic effect on the business. The business survived, and I think, like a lot of businesses that survive through tough times, they come out stronger. But there is a big human impact. There's a lot of people that had to furlough, and the people that weren't furloughed, they were trying to keep things going. They felt the burden of responsibility for survival. So that was, pretty tough. And I think a lot of people who worked through that period probably have their own stories to tell. I don't think anybody was unaffected.
Yeah. But then after that, we came out with the more stronger digital side of things, I think.
Well, I think out of that came the remote working, the home working. Of course, businesses like Zoom were massively powered up by people. It's kind of interesting with Zoom because that technology's been around for a while, but people didn't trust it. It's like it was unstable, and they never really gave it a proper go. So companies I work for, they would usually have this big room. It was like the video conferencing room, and if you wanted to do a video conference, you had to go in that room and you had to book with the other room on another part of the world. Whereas, of course, now this is technology that's on your laptop, it's on your mobile device. People really weren't keen on it. They didn't want to adopt it. But yeah, of course, COVID massively accelerated a load of tech like that. But I think it was triggered by the ways of working that had to be adopted. And that applies just as much to, I don't know, schools, to like, having
Yeah.
lessons on iPads and stuff like that.
Yeah, 100%. Change the whole perspective of a lot
Yeah,
of things. A lot
yeah,
of kids suffer though with their education and all of that. They could not go out to events and meet the people.
absolutely.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's the side of things. So do you want to tell how Rocket Jump started?
Well, it started when I wanted to pursue working fractionally,
Yeah.
and when you work fractionally, essentially you have to create your own identity, your own company
Side.
structure, if you like.
Yeah.
And that was the name I chose
I
for
love
it.
that.
It came from, it's a portmanteau, so it's two words kind of crunched together, but from two ideas. So I always wanted to have my own coffee shop, and I was going to call it Rocket Fuel.
I love
Uh,
that.
and then I like making jam.
Yeah.
And again, we used to laugh that if I had a jam brand, it would be called Jeremy's Jam. You know,
You should do it.
so Rocket Fuel, Jeremy's Jam,
Rocket Jam.
Rocket Jam. Yeah.
But how did Rocket Jam changed a few things? So, for example, like we were speaking about non-negotiables, right?
Yeah.
So, did that help you into building even more like sacred time for you, your family, your own space, your own flexibility?
Yeah, of course, but I've got a slightly different mindset now in terms of the clients that I work with. I need to know what works for them as well.
Okay.
And I think, like a lot of things in life, there's always a kind of a compromise, a third way. So, of course, my daughter's older now, so I don't need to take her to school every day. But there are still other things that are important to me,
Yeah.
and I think just being open about that. But I think the greatest change is just working with multiple different businesses, and multiple different teams, and being able to switch.
Yeah.
When you work in one job, you're typically got lots of time to kind of ponder challenges, and you can see them evolve. When you're working fractionally, you've got less time.
Yeah.
There's more intent and desire for results. So there's a lot more urgency.
So, for example, if somebody wants to start as a fractional,
Yep.
what do you think the roadmap should look like for the next, let's say, 6 months?
Well, I think first of all, treat it like a marketing challenge. So if you're going to be a fractional marketer, then I think you need to figure out what's your proposition. What are you offering? What are you bringing to the market? Go through like a marketing methodology, because that's going to give you a really good idea as to how you then market yourself.
Yeah.
So that could be as simple as, what do you post about on LinkedIn? Which events do you show up to? Those sorts of things, but also, as we talked about at the very beginning, figure out where you want to specialize. Do you want to specialize?
Yeah.
You graphic designer? Are you an SEO specialist? Are you a copywriter? And figure out what you're good at, but also what your heart
What's to do?
wants you to do. Right. So these are quite big questions, and if you there's two schools of thought. One is really figure out intently what it is that you want to
Yeah.
be, and others are actually, just as long as the direction of travel is heading in the right direction, that purpose, that goal will reveal itself. And I think for a lot of people, they worry about, I suppose, being boxed in, closing them. So actually, I'm having a conversation with this person. They need I don't know, a social media specialist, but I've told them I'm a copywriter, but actually I could do that. So I think, don't worry about defining as you go. Be open and obviously honest, and have these sorts of conversations with people, but be clear what you want from the outset. But I do think, treat it as a marketing challenge,
Yeah.
because very often one school of thought in marketing, and I've seen this a lot, is it kind of build it and they will come. So invest in the website and suddenly traffic will just flow towards you. That's not the case. You need to ensure that you've got a really good understanding as to how you create those opportunities. And it can be hard when you start out as a fractional, because there's no pipeline, and you need to build that pipeline yourself. And that's why it can be good, just to have lots and lots of conversations, It could be conversations with people who are already doing what you're doing. Yeah, how did they get to where they're going to go? It could be conversations with people who can help you. Not always with necessarily someone who can give you a job, but can help you. They might kind of refer you to someone else. And I have a real curious quest for learning and reading. I think all of these things help kind of give you, opinions, knowledge, and arguably a point of view that's maybe different. That's going to stand out versus other people.
Yeah, I love that. So, what do you think is the difference between building your own brand, because we've spoken about building personal brands, versus building like a client's brand or working on a brand for somebody else?
Yeah.
Which one do you think is the hardest thing to do?
Well, I mean, in many ways, there's a similar approach. I mean, I think in the world of social media, people tend to want to follow people rather than brands, and so I think ideally they do go hand in hand. So I'm obviously got my own brand. I am myself, but I've got Rocket Jam. But I need to support both of those entities and get them working together rather than one day I'm Jeremy, one day I'm Rocket. It's the same when you work for a company, but of course for a company, your relationship to the brand is going to be slightly different. But I think again a challenge for all marketers is that brand and ambassadorship, if you like, and not only having that yourself, but fostering that in others, which is why it's really important to be really clear on things like the brand personality, the brand tone of voice, the brand purpose. What does the brand really stand for? And that needs to connect the head and the heart. I think, but again, it really depends on the outcome that you're driving. But invariably, strong brands, personal brands, corporate brands, they create a halo that is often worth more, than the advertising budget put together. I'm a big believer in NPS. So NPS stands for Net Promoter System. Have you heard of that? No. So it's a very simple, he says, a very simple system, which basically says it kind of says that probably the most powerful thing that a brand can create is advocacy. So advocacy being the belief that you want to recommend that brand to others. So you're staying in London tonight, right? You're considering all the lovely hotels in London. You look at a hotel. If someone said to you, I really recommend you stay here, you're probably likely to go to that hotel because someone's recommended it to you, someone you know, friend or family, and that has a lot of value. If you don't do that, you might jump onto TripAdvisor and you might look at recommendations from strangers, less arguably value versus recommendations from friends, but still quite valuable. So NPS is about trying to measure the likelihood of people to recommend your brand to others.
That's interesting.
So if you can leverage that and people will recommend you, then arguably that's doing a lot of the hard yards for you. Because you're not having to you're not having to rely on advertising on the tube to talk to you about, what's out in the marketplace. People are recommending, and often when you're making big decisions, things that you haven't done before, invariably that's when when you're with your friend, you say, I'm thinking about X. Do you know anyone? Could you recommend anyone? So that power of recommendation is really important for an individual. Also really important for a brand. And there's a whole kind of discipline called net promoter economics that looks at measuring this and trying to link it to commercial value. And big brands like Apple, eBay have used NPS to great effect to drive growth. And it gets you to get really focused on the customer and giving them a really wow experience that they're going to promote and talk about to others.
All right. So apart from the LinkedIn personal brand that you have, we're talking about the personal brand now. What is one thing that people do not know about you?
About me?
Yeah.
Gosh. Yeah. I mean, it depends who you talk to. I mean, I'm quite a private person. What my wife and I are doing is we've got this place out in Poland. My wife's Polish. I watched this French movie about 25 years ago of a couple that bought this rundown place, and it was their life's work to renovate it and to do it up. And they got a lot of enjoyment from that. So we bought a farm. It was a farm, not a farm anymore,
Okay.
in Poland about 25 years ago.
Okay.
That we're slowly doing up over time. We kind of go over there periodically.
Oh, that's lovely.
So that kind of gives me a kind of very long term project, which gives me a lot of kind of joy and enjoyment.
I love that. That's fun too. Like
Yeah, it is. It is. It's also stressful.
Yeah.
Because anything like that is always in your mind, and we're not there all the time, so you worry about it. But yeah, we've had a lot of great times over there.
Perfect. All right. So if you want to call this chapter that you're in with Rocket Jam yourself, your family, what would you say that this chapter is called?
So I was thinking about how I define the chapters of my life.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about George Michael albums. Yeah. Have you heard of George Michael?
No.
No. He's a pop star, no longer with us, but he wrote Last Christmas. You must have heard that song.
Last Christmas. Yeah.
Yeah. So his albums typically had one word titles, with the exception of one that I think at the beginning, one of his albums was called Listen Without Kind of Prejudice. So for me, it was kind of embodying that at the beginning of your career, you've got to listen, right? And you've got to look to others that have the wisdom and the knowledge and the experience. That's not to say that you can't offer your opinion, but be a sponge. And then there is one called Faith,
Okay.
which is, we've talked a bit about, knowing where you're going, being an opportunist.
Yes.
And so just having faith it's going to work out. You've got to believe that, and that you're doing the right thing. And if you're not, kind of redirect.
Yeah.
Another album he had was called Patience.
Okay.
And so careers are long-term goals.
Yeah.
Things take time. I've worked for one company for 9 years.
That's a long time.
That's a long time. Yeah. And I had lots of different roles during that time, and be patient for what you're searching for. Yeah. I think, don't get frustrated if it doesn't happen straight away. I mean, in today's world, things can happen a lot faster. Yeah. And I think it's brilliant that people can be successful so fast. That's great. We want to work in a world where that's possible. But sometimes, the big dreams, the big aspirations take time. Yeah. And then the other album was called Older.
Okay.
So that's probably where I am now. I'm probably feeling a little bit older, kind of. But
no, let me clarify. That's not the case, no.
But at the same time, the conversation today just forced me to kind of look back, and things have changed a lot. Yeah. And I think, just don't get stuck in your ways. Change is here forever. Yeah. Change can be hard, can be painful, but that's what change is, right? And I think just embrace it and find the opportunities within that. And there are loads out there, and just ensure that you're enjoying what you're doing.
That's perfect. All right. If you want to dedicate this episode to somebody from past, present, celebrity, anybody, do it.
Yeah. It's probably not really my thing to dedicate it to anybody, but I do think that, if I was starting out in marketing today, because there is a little bit of debate as to, would you recommend someone go into marketing today, in a career that seems to be potentially going to be at risk of displacement because of AI? I would say, of course, because you've got so much opportunity to shape brands, to grow businesses, and to do some really exciting, creative and rewarding work.
Yeah.
So I think, really, if anyone's listening to this and at the beginning of their career, stick with it, and I'm sure that you'll get a lot of enjoyment and satisfaction.
I love that. That's perfect. All right. The last question, which is the mic flip, which I give all of my guests, is you can ask, this is your podcast. You
Hmm.
can ask me any question you want to ask me.
Okay, so talk to me about a book that you've read recently that changed your thinking about something.
I don't want to say it out loud, but I've I was into smart books. I've recently gotten into smart books.
What's a smart book?
So I was into self-help books. They were not helping me.
Okay.
So I went into another category, which is like the smut category, and I am in love with that category. It's like fantasy fiction and all of that. It's not changed my life,
Okay.
but it's given me that time out of my life, from
Right.
my life. So there's this series, Love, Hate, Win, by
Yeah.
Anna Huang. Love her. So it just gives me that from this busy schedule, just takes me out,
Yeah.
brings me to that fantasy world where there are handsome people and everything's working out for everybody and just gives me that break. So yeah.
Great, great, love it. And I'm a big believer in reading.
Yeah.
And I was reading recently about something called USR, which is
Yeah.
uninterrupted silent reading, just making time, putting the phone down,
Yeah.
you know, at least once a week. There's a stat I read recently: 40% of adults in the UK didn't read a book last year, a single book.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
YouGov poll. So yeah, I think it's great that that's.
I think that's one thing that we were discussing, that it's like a lot of things back to back that I have right now. That's one thing that takes me out of that. And then
Yeah.
I could get back into things.
Great.
Yeah.
That's a non-negotiable.
Yeah, that's a non-negotiable. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Jeremy. It was lovely having you on.
No, thank you very much.
I
Good
hope you
luck with
enjoyed
it.
the conversation.
Yeah, I did. It's